Wie geht's euch, Fam? Here we go with another one. Das darf ich euch auf gar keinen Fall vorenthalten. Hört euch das mal an.
Knows that shilajit is one of the most incredible super nutrients, and they don't even know how it's formed deep under the earth. It's just got incredible amino acids and natural peptides that nothing else has. And what does it do for you? Everything. Your skin, your clarity, your focus. I'm on this stuff. Your wife, your girlfriend will thank you. That's just a little side issue. Shilajit's awesome.
Welcome to the Health Ranger Report with Mike Adams, the Health Ranger.
Let me provide some context to what's actually happening with health and vaccines and HHS and also war and bombs and all of it, okay? Because I hear people saying, oh, HHS, RFK Jr., he has to revoke the vaccines, and if he doesn't, then millions more babies are going to be injured, maimed, or killed by the vaccines, which is true. That's absolutely true. But you have to keep in mind that the United States government, yes, even though Trump is president, which really only gives him a limited amount of power in the system, the United States government and the UK government and the New Zealand government, Canadian, Australian, all the Western governments are satanic death cults, okay? So as soon as you understand that, everything else makes sense. Why do they have to keep jabbing children and injuring them and causing pain and suffering and death? Because it's a ritualistic child abuse practice that's called the science. Okay? So the science is a satanic death cult that engages in ritualistic child sacrifice. And even if RFK Jr. manages to do something like, hey, let's stop the COVID shots on kids. Well, guess what? There are 100 other ways that children are being ritualistically sacrificed and murdered and exploited by the Satanists who run these Western countries. And I'm not saying that Trump is a Satanist. What I'm saying is that Trump has limited power inside a system run by Satanists, which is, of course, the Democrats and all the leftover people and all the deep state people. They are Satanists. And Satanists run the corporations, Satanists run the medical establishment. They run the media. They run the abortion centers, obviously, because abortion is another satanic, ritualistic death cult practice. And there are many other examples of this. Okay, why does the United States ship bombs to Israel to be dropped on children? Why? Because Israel and the United States are involved in ritualistic child sacrifice through the use of bombs. And it just goes right along with abortion. It goes right along with vaccines. It goes right along with the pesticides and herbicides that are harming and damaging children. All of it. It's all the same thing. And why are they targeting children? Because a child is innocence. A child is the most pure representation of the will of God and the will of creation. A child is created through the miracle of God and Mother Nature and through a mother and a father, something that the radical left and the Satanists don't even think exists because they believe in transgenderism, which isn't real, but it's part of their demonic cult religion where they want to push transgenderism. They don't believe in mothers. They don't believe in fathers. They've actually gone out of the way to delete the mentions of mothers and fathers and moms and dads through all the government documents and all the healthcare documents and all the university documents. They want to erase mothers and fathers from all of human history if they could get away with it. Unfortunately, there's a lot of pushback against that right now, and you see a lot of corporations that are pulling out of all the wokeism and the DEI nonsense and the LGBT parades. And look, that's thanks to pushback from all of us and the work of certain individuals like Robbie Starbuck has been spearheading a lot of that anti-DEI activism. He's been very effective at that. That's why I'm giving him credit. But also Trump and the Trump administration are pushing back hard against wokeism and DEI, which is satanic. So yeah, Trump is pushing back against Satanism. So anybody out there saying that Trump is himself, satanic, no. He's pushing back against Satanism on one hand, but then he's still providing bombs to Israel, which is a satanic death cult, on the other hand. So Trump is actually straddling both of these. He's got one foot into supporting Satanism and one foot opposing Satanism, which sounds like a painful way to do the splits, actually, if you think about it. It's kind of like being drawn and quartered in the old world. I would not want to have my legs pulled apart like that. And let's hope that doesn't happen. But Trump needs to pick a side. And he needs to pick the side that's not satanic, obviously. Which means that Trump needs to come out and oppose the satanic vaccines, the mRNA injections. He's got to oppose the satanic organ harvesting from abortion centers. And he's got to oppose the satanic mass bombing of civilians by Israel and the Zionists, who are genocidal lunatics who think that God gave them permission to slaughter other innocent human beings, which is a real delusion. That's some crazy, insane, lunatic, delusional thinking right there, to think, oh, God spoke to us and gave us the supreme right to slaughter anybody that we wanted so that we could steal their land and rivers and resources and displace them. And we'll call it self-defense the entire time, but we're just going to keep bombing their hospitals and their women and children and all their apartment buildings, but we'll call it self-defense. That's what Israel's doing. And Israel, as it is being run today, is a satanic death cult. And look, any Christian pastors or priests who are advocating for Israel's antics, they are in favor of this satanic death cult. It's insane. But there's more to this. So mass fluoridation of the water supply was also a satanic ritual. Why? Because it attacked the neurology of children. Fluoride in the water causes brain damage and lowered IQs. And that is exactly why it has been used for all these decades across U.S. cities, mostly to target children who are disproportionately affected because of the neurodevelopmental retardation caused by fluoride. On top of that, the practice of poisoning the food supply, spraying actual poisons, pesticides and herbicides on the food supply, and then feeding that to children, which is routine in the school lunch program. The school lunches are poison meals to poison children. The children that they couldn't kill through abortion and genocide and vaccines. If you're still alive, they'll poison you in the school lunchrooms. It's part of a ritualistic abuse of children. So looking to Secretary Kennedy and saying, hey, RFK Jr., you should end the child abuse in vaccines, in medicine, in psychiatric drugs, in the food supply. You should end all the child torture and child sacrifice. Even though he probably wants to achieve an end to that evil, he is in a system that is steeped in ritualistic child sacrifice and child abuse. And I didn't even talk about all the child trafficking yet, but that's part of this as well. But understand, RFK Jr. cannot overhaul the entire system. It is a satanic death cult system, and it's going to continue to extract a cost from children for a very long time to come. Look, even if Trump wanted to stop all of this, again, he's one man in a system that has been built on decades of satanic corrupt.
One man in a system that is built on generational satanic curses and peoples that's always implementing that shit, man.
And blackmail and Epstein files and child sacrifice rituals and truly like dark sorcerer's power that has infested the system. So,
Bro, wir leben in einer Zeit, wo wir uns offen und ehrlich über diese Sachen unterhalten können. Unfassbar.
You got to realize that Trump can't stop it either. He could push back in certain ways against woke policies and DEI policies. He can push back, but he can't stop the system. The only way this whole thing actually ends is when the satanic system is utterly destroyed. And that would be every Western government. Really, every Western government is rooted in a satanic death cult. And some of this still traces back to London and the city of London and the British pedophiles and vampires and whatever their family history takes them back to, sort of reptilian brainstem demons and all kinds of things. And until that is ended, the satanic evil on this earth will not end. Now, it's worth noting that in the Christian tradition, as well as the Muslim tradition, there are specific scriptures that speak about the end times and the conquering of evil by God. So in the Christian tradition, we talk about the book of Revelation. And in the book of Revelation, it talks about the destruction of evil. And how does that destruction happen? Well, if you give it an honest reading, God throws large comets onto Earth and wipes out all of Western civilization, also wipes out Israel and much of the Middle East, dries up the Euphrates River. And this is all described with the 7 trumpets, the 7 bowls, the 7 seals. And it's the 6th trumpet in particular that hits the Middle East and destroys Israel. But each one of the 7 trumpets strikes a different target on Earth, and one of them strikes North America. One of them strikes the Atlantic Ocean, is what it seems like. And one of them strikes land, probably like northern Russia, somewhere like that. But this is what's described in the book of Revelation. Whether you believe it or not, John of Patmos was given this vision, this very, very long duration vision, by angels who ordered him to faithfully reproduce this vision word for word, to write it down and make sure all future Christians would read about it. Okay. Well, in Islam, there's much the same thing, although I'm not as familiar with the Quran, but I did a couple of sermons about scripture from the Quran that talked about the exact same thing and how God would defeat evil on earth. And as I've just described to you, that evil is Western governments. The Western governments are the satanic death cults in operation right now. Now, I'm not excusing all the other nations either, by the way. Many of them are evil in their own ways. I'm not excusing communism. I'm not excusing corruption. But I am pointing out that if God were to target the most evil group on planet Earth right now, he would target the U.S. empire and Western governments, because they are running this satanic death cult that specifically targets children and preys upon children through widespread, abortion and all the things that we've talked about here. Vaccines, LGBT, assaulting children, genital mutilation, all of it. It's all satanic. And Russia doesn't engage in satanic genital mutilation of children. China doesn't do that. Now, China does other things that don't respect human rights, like organ harvesting, Falun Gong members and things like that. So again, I'm not excusing China, but it's the Western empires that specifically target children from mutilations, which Russia doesn't do. Iran doesn't do that. I doubt North Korea is even that evil. It takes the Western nations rooted in satanic genocide, to bomb children to death like Israel is doing, or to chop off their genitals like liberals in the U.S. have been doing, okay? So what I want you to understand is that it is irrational to call upon RFK Jr., solve all the problems and protect children. Even though, yeah, I'm guilty of doing that too. I call on him to do those things, but I also realize it's irrational. to have an actual hope that he can stop the sacrifice and mutilation of children. He can't. And all we can really pray for is the collapse of the system that allows HHS to operate. The collapse of the CDC, the FDA, the NIH, all of that, that will be Freedom Day for children. You're not going to be able to reform the system. Even the new nominee to run the CDC that RFK Jr. has picked and that Trump has supported. What's her name? Monares? Something like that. She's a vaxxer. She's a vaxxer, okay? So she's going to keep pushing vaccines for children, which is a form of ritualistic child sacrifice. So, it's come down to the point where even Secretary Kennedy ends up nominating people that are just going to push satanic child sacrifice jabs because nobody else can get confirmed by the Senate. And the Senate is run by Satanists. The Senate is basically like the chambers in the Capitol building are basically a synagogue of Satan. Where this
Und das ist überall so. Europa, Amerika, überall.
Satanic senators slither like snakes. And they make sure that the mass slaughter of American children and the mass torture and the autism and everything continues. That is their job. They get paid to, and some of them get blackmailed, and some of them get paid probably in children, who knows. But they get bribed, threatened, or influenced, or paid off to make sure that the empire continues to sacrifice children. That is the role of the vast majority of the senators in the United States Senate. They are not senators, they are Satanists. And overall, I think that people like RFK Jr. are well-meaning men working inside a sinister satanic system where they will not be able to be very effective. And in some ways, I think Trump is in a similar boat. Although a lot of times, he's in it for the buck, he's in it for the meme coins, for the crypto, he's in it for the property deals. He always wants to make a deal. But even in his moments of wanting to do the right thing for America, he's up against an entire system that is so steeped in evil that you can only really kind of alter small things around the edges. You're rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, but you can't stop the ship from sinking. And you can't stop the collapse of the U.S. empire. It's going to collapse. And it's going to collapse precisely because it abandoned its Christian values and its faith. And in its place, it embraced satanic values of death and suffering and destruction and deception, lies and everything else. That's why America will fall. And when the current system does fall,
Muss fallen.
it will be a very positive thing for the world when all of Western civilization collapses, which will probably happen with a currency collapse or a giant cascading debt collapse, and it will cause a lot of short-term chaos and pain. But before very long, it'll be obvious that this was the ending of a great evil.
Na, wer freut sich schon auf den Oktober? Digitaler Euro.
Centuries of these nations being run by Satanists. And when that ends, again, it will be a positive thing for the human race. So let's pray for that ending.
Für die bereit sind.
And then a rebirth. Okay, so I'm not anti-America, just to be clear. I am pro-America, but what we have today is not America. What we have is a satanic death cult, an occupied enemy government, occupied by Satanists, who do not represent America. I'm talking about ending that system so that we can actually resurrect America. Just to be clear, I am pro-America, but we have to have a national exorcism. We have to exorcise the demons and the Satanists out of government, out of education, out of Hollywood, out of the corporations, out of the medical industry, that's for sure. How many Satanists are into vaccines and abortion? It's like, anything to damage children. Like that's who they are. They're just slithering, slimy, dark-hearted Satanists. They want to harm children, as many as possible. So that's got to be ended. And it will implode upon itself. It's a self-collapsing system. And when it does collapse, then you and I have to rebuild a much better society.
You and I.
And that's when we'll have our
Du und ich.
opportunity to do so. And where we have to return to faith, we have to return to core Christian values. We have to teach values. It's the only way.
Göttliche, nicht unbedingt christliche. Ne? Hier sind auch viele Moslems, hier sind auch viele Leute von anderen. Wir müssen zu göttlichen Regeln zurückkehren.
Get our country back. That's the only way we get our civilization back. So be prepared for that process to take place. It is going to happen. In the meantime, prepare yourself spiritually. And if you want to hear my sermons, I recorded about 104 sermons last year under the Church of Natural Abundance, which is our new church that we launched last year. And you can find.
Ja. Das ist jetzt wieder ein bisschen so, ne? So auf die, ne? Das will ich euch nicht mit langweilen und euch voll quatschen mit. Weiter geht's.
About Romans, I talk about all of it. Well, most of it. All throughout the Bible. So check that out and prepare yourself. Prepare yourself to actually do battle with the satanic demons that want to bring this country down and destroy humanity and murder babies and maim infants and slaughter everybody, because they're at war with humanity, just as Satan is at war with God. So of course they're at war with all human beings created in the image of God.
Du und ich.
So of course Satan wants to destroy humanity. Of course Satan is going to wage war against the entire human race. That's what Satan does. You should not be surprised when that happens.
Deswegen, diese ganzen Kriege, die unter uns gerade jetzt laufen, unter den Menschen, unter Völkern, Kulturgruppen, religiöse Gruppen, Menschen, Hautfarbengruppen, politische Gruppen, spielt da nicht mit. Spielt da nicht mit.
It is actually already underway. And I don't hear anybody in the federal government talking about, hey, we need to get the Satanists out of this department.
Nope.
I haven't heard that yet once. So that's not even on their radar. It's like, hey, in order for God to have mercy on our nation, we need to stop murdering babies in the womb. Nobody even says that in Washington. It's not even acceptable to talk about protecting children from abortion. Okay? That's not even part of the conversation. So if you think that they're going to make everything right and protect children, but they're not even willing to talk about widespread baby slaughter through abortion centers and organ harvesting and inhumane, vaccine experiments on children, if they're not willing to talk about any of those things, what are the odds that they're going to protect children in any meaningful way? The odds are zero. The odds are zero. They're just going to, fiddle with the edges of this. Oh, we had the cereal companies take red dye out of the cereals, but we won't stop the mass murder of children. We're just going to make sure the ones that aren't murdered don't eat red dye, and we'll call that a victory. Yay! Is that really a victory? Is that a big deal? I mean, red dye is a food ingredient, but they do die in abortion centers. Which one should be more important? You got to stop the death. That's a higher priority, or should be, than stopping the dye. Stop the death before you stop the dye. But that's not the value system in Washington, D.C., which is a satanic city. All the symbolism and, all the top-down maps and the owls and everything, all the evil symbolism all throughout Washington, D.C.
Informationszeitalter, mein Bruder. Informationszeitalter.
Basically, it's an occult capital of dark forces.
Yep.
That's why I hate that city. I won't even go there. So stay informed, folks. Read your Bible.
Lest eure Korans, lest eure Bibeln, lest sämtliche religiöse oder göttliche Schriften, die ihr zu Hause habt. Die Zeit ist verdammt real. Das ist alles passiert genau jetzt. Ich hoffe, ich konnte euch euer Horizont ein bisschen erweitern hiermit. Und ich sehe euch sehr bald wieder. Versprochen. Peace, Love and Light. Asche.